I had a great many interests while I was in high school. And part of it was because that's when I first met my wife-to-be, Gretchen. Her family had been transferred to my hometown in southern Indiana. I loved science, particularly electricity, and I learned to repair radios and repaired them for my friends and teachers and so forth. And like so many other students at that particular time, it was post-Sputnik, and engineering was the big draw. And we both got full rides to Purdue University. Gretchen had graduated in education, got a teaching job in a small community near West Lafayette in Indiana, and spent 2 years doing that while I finished my master's degree. I think the biggest break was actually going to the University of Kansas to pursue the coursework for my Ph.D. And because there were faculty members there who were involved in a relatively new field of history, which was called quantitative history, using computers and statistics to study the past and study communities. The interesting thing that happened to me was my return to Nebraska Wesleyan really was a life-changing decision, because the first thing that happened was that they asked me if I would consider teaching Nebraska history. That really opened up all kinds of opportunities. The Humanities Council in Nebraska asked me to be part of their Speakers Bureau, and so I was invited to do programming and presentations on various aspects of Nebraska history for local organizations. So that's when I became interested in writing articles and doing films. And I became interested in the Genoa Indian School out in Genoa, Nebraska, which had been one of the federal industrial schools for Native Americans. So I went out to Genoa to see what was left out there. And it was an interesting sight. And I said, there's got to be more that went on here than meets the eye. And so I wrote a small grant to the Humanities Council to pay for a trip to Washington, D.C., where I could get into the Native American archives, and discovered that, yes, there was a major history there. The school was at one time, in the late 1880s, the largest of 24 industrial Indian schools across the country. I decided that I needed to do more research, and I spent a couple years preparing an article for Nebraska Land magazine, and that was a hit, and it led to Nebraska Educational Television becoming interested in my helping to write a script that they could produce on the Genoa Indian School. It was good enough, evidently, that it won the Clarion Award for the best low-budget documentary. That led to the next unexpected event. David McCulloch, who introduced regularly the monthly American Experience show on CBS, invited myself and ETV to do a 1-hour documentary on all the industrial Indian schools. There were other article possibilities. The University of Nebraska Press invited me to rewrite the major standard Nebraska history text by James Olson, who was head of the Historical Society. 1995, Olson refused to do a third edition, and the press asked me if I would do it, and I did, and it went over very well. In 2015, it was time to do a fourth edition, and instead of a 250-page book, it turned out to be a 500-page book. and won the award from the Center for the Book for the best nonfiction reference work in Nebraska in 2015. People have asked me, you know, what made you continue focusing on Nebraska history? And part of it was there was always a new opportunity coming along. I learned early on that students who are required to take certain courses, you know, rarely enjoy it and often dread it. I figured I was going to have to do something dramatic to liven it up. And I focused on, in both Nebraska history and in the American Survey, on having students write short histories of their family and short histories of their community, or a choice of one or the other. And it became a real hit. We invariably run into a former student, and oftentimes they say that they really enjoyed that assignment, that it really gave them an opportunity to learn something about their families, about their communities that they might not have become involved in before. So I was really excited about that. Other opportunities began to open up, and a lot of these I considered personal achievements. For one thing, I was invited to be part of a 4-scholar panel at NET Television to advise the staff on a program, a regular program called Nebraska Stories. In my case, it was that I was willing to take opportunities as they came along. You know, I don't think Gretchen probably complains that I never turned down anything. But I guess to bring it down to one word, and it's not a word that's often thought of in a very positive reference, but probably opportunistic. I mean, I did enjoy opportunities. I did enjoy new challenges, and so that's what I would say. I think we have some real problems today on the political scene. Something that really bothers me in that many students have lost interest in politics because they're not inspired by what they see. They're disappointed with what they see. Politics for many of them is not an obvious path to success, and I think that's terrible. Well, I'd like for them to remember several things. I certainly would like for them to remember, you know, the books I've written, which now total 8, most of them in Nebraska history. I think I'd like to be remembered as someone who tried to do his best and succeeded sometimes against the odds.